Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today for the Packers Fresh Trends Consumer Behavior webcast. We're going to discuss the findings in the most recent Fresh Trends, which Packers subscribers should have received in about the last month or so, and what these trends mean to both produce marketers and retailers. I'm Greg Johnson, editor of the Packer. I'll be setting the stage today, and we'll get insights from two true experts in the retail field. Throughout the webcast, you'll hear from Pamela Riemenschneider, editor of Produce Retailer magazine and retail editor of the Packer. And we'll also be joined by Patrick Mills, produce director for Lucky's Market based in Boulder, Colorado. Lucky's Market has 5 stores across the U.S. and is on an aggressive path for future growth, with several more stores planned to open in 2014 and several more again in 2015. Patrick is a lifer in the produce industry, having worked in the supply side, specializing in imported items and food service, and then moving to retail, where he's worked for Albertsons, Safeway, Sunflower Farmers Market, before joining Lucky's. We'd like to thank our webcast sponsors today, the Pear Bureau Northwest, who run the USA Pears program, and Yakima-based First Fruits Marketing of Washington, the exclusive North American marketers of the Opal Apple. For today's webcast, I'm going to start by explaining a little bit about what Fresh Trends is and how it works, and then I'll talk about demographics and some overall trends from research. Following that, Pamela and I will talk about some findings regarding specific fruits and vegetables, and Patrick will give his perspective throughout. So let's dig in. The Packer began. We'd like to thank our webcast sponsors today, the Pear Bureau Northwest, who run the USA Pears program, and Yakima-based First Fruits Marketing of Washington, the exclusive North American marketers of the Opal Apple. For today's webcast, I'm going to start by explaining a little bit about what Fresh Trends is and how it works, and then I'll talk about demographics and some overall trends from research. Following that, Pamela and I will talk about some findings regarding specific fruits and vegetables, and Patrick will give his perspective throughout. So let's dig in. The Packer began Fresh Trends consumer research to track trends in the purchases and consumption of fresh produce in 1983. So that makes this the 31st edition. Fresh Trends remains the only ongoing consumer research study available to the entire produce industry. This year, consumers were surveyed online in mid-October of 2013, and 1,002 of them qualified and completed the survey, which was balanced to match the U.S. population in terms of gender, age, ethnicity, and household income the best we could. The survey takes about 15 minutes to complete. Only those who are responsible for all, most, or equally share some of the grocery shopping for their households were included in the final sample, and participants had to be at least 21 years of age. The last part is one of the keys to this year's survey as far as demographics. Only those who are responsible for all, most, or equally sharing some of the grocery shopping for their households are included in the final sample. And this group changes every year. We've noticed in the last 5 years or so, as the economy has changed the way people live their lives, that the demographic breakdowns of who does the shopping has changed. Fresh Trends 2014 represents the first time ever that we've had more male respondents than female. The gender breakdown was 51% male this year. Last year, it was 49% male, and that was the highest it had ever been. So while this is good news in gender equality levels, it does represent generally lower purchases for numbers of produce. We've always shown in Fresh Trends the gender breakdowns, and consistently over the years, males purchase most fruits and vegetables about 5 to 10 percentage points fewer than females. We don't know exactly why this is, but we're not the only ones looking into it. At the Produce for Better Health Foundation annual meeting this March, a PBH survey looked into dad purchases versus mom purchases. Now, at the time of this meeting, PBH said they had fewer than 100 male responses in their survey, so they didn't feel comfortable talking about it officially since it wasn't statistically significant yet. But patterns were definitely emerging, and I got permission from PBH to share some of these patterns that we're starting to see. For instance, you will see that the following factors are significantly different between dads and moms, such as dads spend less time preparing meals than moms. They're less likely to say fresh fruits or vegetables are easy to use. They're less convinced than moms of the importance of eating fresh fruits and vegetables, and less likely to include them in families' meals and snacks. They're more likely to say fresh fruits and vegetables are not appetizing and they forget to buy them. But they say freshness is most important when shopping for fresh fruits and vegetables, compared to moms who say cost is more important. A little less significant than moms, dads are also shown to be more likely to say they eat too few fruits and vegetables, and they also eat fruits and vegetables to prevent disease, whereas moms like to taste. And I discussed with the CEO of PBH there on the screen, Elizabeth Pavanka, and I asked her whether or not she saw this as a good thing or a bad thing, whether dads were slackers or are they just missing the opportunities out there. And she is definitely on the opportunity side, as you can see her quote there. She's very optimistic that it's an opportunity for dads to shop more and cook more. Now, Patrick, in your stores, I would imagine you're seeing more male shopping than previous had been shopping. Is that the case?
Absolutely, Greg. Like you alluded, I think more men are learning to cook and spending more time cooking at home, sharing the household duties, if you will. So it's really trending. I think cooking has become very popular with all the networks that are out there to offer that to the public. So yeah, a lot more men are definitely shopping and purchasing produce and asking more questions throughout the store.
Now, we don't have firm numbers on these, but one of the things that PBH was finding is that dads are tending to buy more fresh cut items and raw items because there's no cooking involved. And I can speak from experience when I'm getting my kids to eat produce, it's so much easier to just cut something or take something out of a bag as opposed to cooking it. So this year we also added a big demographic change to the way we did Fresh Trends. This year is the first year that we added an ethnic component to the survey to track buying patterns that differed among ethnic groups. Some patterns emerged, and we'll highlight some of them here. In our demographic profile, which we tried to match as best we could to the U.S. population, you can see the breakdowns by ethnic group. The top area is from Fresh Trends 2014, and then I also included what the U.S. Census considers the American breakdown. So we're pretty close across the board. The Packers numbers are a little less representative of the Hispanic market. Otherwise, I think they're pretty consistent with the way the U.S. population is. So a few of the ethnic group highlights that I wanted to point out here today. One of the things we found is Asian consumers were the most likely demographic group to be frequent shoppers of fresh produce, according to our survey. 43% of Asian shoppers said they shop for fresh produce at least 5 times a month, and as often as every day. That is a sharp contrast to the shopping patterns of Caucasian, African American, and Hispanic consumers in our group, who were much more likely to shop for fruits and vegetables only 2 or 3 times a month. We also found that taste was the most important factor for affecting purchases for all demographic groups, but it meant the most to Hispanic consumers, whereas price was the most important factor to Caucasian shoppers. determining produce shopping, Asian consumers said they were the most likely to buy fresh produce to improve their health, with 39% saying so. The opposite side of that were the Caucasian consumers, who less than 1/5 said health reasons affected their decision to buy. And African Americans were the most likely to say they would not sacrifice quality for price. Now, Patrick, I know in Colorado you have a store in a very ethnically diverse area. Were any of the findings that we had in Fresh Trends surprising or noteworthy to the way you merchandise the various ethnic groups?
No, Greg, it looked pretty spot on, to be honest with you. We're, like you said, we're diverse, and the Asians do test. The Asian group seems to buy more for health, and with questions that we receive in the store and requests for certain items. So yeah, and then I think you're spot on.
Okay. And we also had some overall highlights that I wanted to share with the audience today as far as just general produce trends that we found in Fresh Trends. For instance, according to our numbers, 93% of shoppers reported buying fresh fruit, and 87% said they purchased fresh vegetables in the past year, which is consistent within a percentage point or two in previous surveys. 71% of shoppers say they're eating more produce now than they did 5 years ago, while 63% said they're eating more than just 1 year ago. 80% said they eat more produce now with the goal of getting more nutrients in their diet. We also looked at where consumers shop for fresh produce. We asked them the number one spot where they bought their fresh produce, and as you can see the results on the screen, 39% of consumers in our survey said they bought fresh produce at a traditional supermarket, but that number is going down from previous years. Trips to chain superstores such as Walmart, Target, and Meijer gained ground this year, with 27% of respondents saying these stores were their primary destination for fresh produce. That's up from 25% last year. Specialty markets such as Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, or Lucky's were cited by 7% of consumers. Chain discounters, which is what we consider the Aldi's, Save-A-Lots, and Food for Less type stores, were the primary destination for 6% of shoppers as well. And that number was the same for warehouse stores such as Sam's Club or Costco. Last year, 5% of shoppers listed these formats as their primary outlet, so it's gaining slightly. And 10% of consumers said they bought at farmers markets. Now, Patrick, I mentioned Lucky stores in here in the specialty market. Where do you feel like your store fits into this where to shop matrix?
I think it definitely fits in where you tagged us in as a specialty market. I'd almost go as far as saying we're a natural market, if you will. Our goals are simply to offer good food at a good price. We tend to drive the customer through produce by having produce being our front and center of our store. We offer farmers market feel with bulk displays, less foo-foo-ish, if you will, style merchandising. We get full displays. We try to offer a really good retail price. We offer as many organics as we can to meet the consumer's needs. We also have a really nice fresh meat market. Our grocery side of the things is focused more on the natural side of the grocery side, but we do offer, Campbell's soup, because who doesn't want to eat Campbell's soup? Everybody wants Campbell's soup like their grandmother had it. So we do offer a bit of everything, but we do focus more on that specialty side, natural food market category.
Pamela, where do you see this trend going in your produce retailer reporting?
Well, we're seeing a lot of growth in that specialty market segment. If you look at some of the major players, the Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Sprouts, they're all growing at a pretty aggressive pace. You don't see a whole lot of new store openings at chain superstores. You don't see a whole lot of new store openings at traditional supermarkets. And I'm talking about broad-ranging, entering new markets, and really aggressive growth. So I think stores like Lucky's are ones to watch because consumers are wanting to get that farmer's market feel, but they want it year-round, and especially stores where they can get that.
Yeah, indeed, we're definitely seeing consolidation among the traditional supermarket stores, so I think this is consistent with what we're seeing in the market now. Of course, we know that local fresh produce and local food of all kinds is a growing trend, so we ask our consumers about this every year. 61% of shoppers in our survey said it was important to support local and regional growers by keeping their foods in the community. 40% of respondents said they typically buy locally grown produce. And why do they do that? Well, supporting local growers is the number one reason that consumers say they bought locally at 52%. 41% of shoppers say quality and freshness. And 33% say it's to save money. We also saw that 30% of consumers say they buy it because of health reasons or fewer pesticides. And of course, we know that there's no evidence to suggest that that's the case unless it's labeled organic or something. And, consumers don't always make that distinction. 30% say it's for better flavor, and 18% say it's better for the environment to buy locally. Now, I know Lucky Stores is a big proponent of local production and having local product in your stores. Patrick, what are some reasons why consumers are showing higher demand for that?
It's a big deal. You're right, Greg. Money obviously is their price. The quality and freshness is pretty amazing. If you can build a good local program in each one of your communities, just because there's days where we order product from the farmer in the morning and it hits the shelf before lunchtime, so it's that fresh. It also helps, with the traditional footprint of doing business with trucks and transportation and fuel costs, et cetera, et cetera. So we try to narrow it down as a company there's so many layers of local. We try to bring it as close to our stores as possible. Our stores here in the Boulder, Colorado area has a plethora of opportunity to buy local. We have our own, actually a farm that we work with here called Lucky's Farm as well that's local. But it's just to try to support the local farmer, the local grower, to help them grow their family, to help them grow the community, and just to get, a better flavor, a better cost, a healthier piece of product on your shelf, quicker and safer. It's, and just to be a big supportive component.
Well, the Packers based in Kansas City, and while we like to support locally here, the truth is half the year it's too cold to buy anything local. And I know that anywhere north of here is going to be the case even more so. Patrick, do you find that your customers are savvy enough to know that if it's cold outside, the local options are going to be a little more limited?
They are. They really are. There's times where, you'll get somebody ask you for something, do you have it local in the middle of winter and, it's snowing outside. So, yeah, there's those situations where you have to explain, that there's different regions, different temperatures, different growing aspects. But you're right. In the Kansas City area, we do try hard. It's a season. It's a seasonal thing. And once the customer gets used to seasonal seasons and what options there are for local, in our Missouri store, we have several options, which isn't too far from you, that we activate on in the summer. Not only in the produce side of things, but also in the herb side of things. There's some local herb growers and different things like that. There's ways to support your community, in the right time of year for sure.
Well, this is the time of the webcast where we're going to start talking about individual fruits and vegetables and what the trends are, if they're growing, if they're shrinking, what the demographic breakdowns are for the different commodities so that marketers can hone in a little bit more tightly on who the ideal consumer is. Pamela and I are going to each go through some of these items, so I'll let Pamela start off with mangoes.
Thanks, Greg. And I picked mangoes because we did see some movement this year. Mangoes entered the top 20 fruits for the first time in that number 20. And 25% of our respondents said they bought a mango in the past year. That's about the same as last year. One of the big factors in mango purchase we saw, and this was really reflected in our demographics, is that results were heavily influenced by ethnicity. If you look at the chart here, the white Caucasian folks only said they bought mangoes 19% of the time, compared with double or more in the other categories. So that was interesting results to see. And certainly an opportunity for a lot of retailers out there to really push mangoes in areas that may not have a whole lot of ethnic shoppers. There's an untapped population for you there. And results were also heavily influenced by age. If you look at the chart there, the youngest age group that we surveyed, the 21 to 39-year-olds, were the highest likelihood of mango purchase, and the 59 and over were about half of that. And income also was a factor. Income was a factor in most of our purchases. The highest income typically purchase more. They've purchased significantly more in the mango category, 32% versus 19%. And consumer education was really reflected in another question that we asked our respondents. Mango ripeness is one of the issues. Only 31% of our respondents said they were comfortable selecting a ripe mango. And I think retailers have an opportunity there. Patrick, what do you do in your stores to help educate consumers about how to select a mango, mango ripeness, which mangoes to eat? What are you doing in your stores?
You know, Pamela, we do a lot of sampling. We do a lot of we try to educate our customer about the product. To make a short story quick, we did a promotion for a new store in one market, and for mangoes as a lead item, sold a full load of mangoes, full truckload of mangoes, went off really, really well. Went up to Montana to open a store, and we thought, well, wow, we've got a good idea here from past history, and we couldn't sell any mangoes in Montana until we started sampling and showing the consumer how to pick a ripe mango, how to look for softness, how to look for color, and even how to prepare it, you know, how to cut it without making a mess in your hands. So, you know, it's all, in our eyes, in our store's eyes, it's all about the education to the consumer on how to cut it, how to pick the proper mango. And once you get it in their mouth, it's all over. They are an amazing fruit.
Oh, great. Mangoes in Montana. I like to hear that. Well, Greg, what are we seeing in broccoli?
Broccoli is one of the commodities that's enjoying a little bit of popularity. It has risen this year from the 9th most popular vegetable last year to number 6. 58% of consumers said they bought broccoli in the past 12 months. And it's the 4th most popular item that people buy now that they previously did not buy. You know, what groups are buying broccoli? It's actually pretty consistent across most demographics. As you can see here, we picked out one. There's no real age group that buys broccoli more than any other. It is, we do see that income is a factor, and that people with higher household income do buy broccoli a little bit more. And we also noticed that the male-female breakdown, females buy broccoli about 10 percentage points more than males. Kids in the household don't seem to be much of a factor at all. as you can see there, income is in fact a factor, which is pretty consistent with most produce items.
We have grapes here. They were the third most popular fruit. They were up from number 4 last year. They jumped over strawberries. We see grapes and strawberries over the years kind of battle for third and fourth place. This is the 8th time that grapes have been number 3. But the reason we chose grapes, 70% of respondents purchase grapes. They're pretty popular fruit with just about everyone. But the reason we chose them is because we did see a shift. For the first time this year, red seedless grapes overtook green seedless grapes as the variety that consumers prefer to purchase. Patrick, are you seeing red grapes showing some popularity in your store?
Absolutely. They're more popular than ever. It seems like if we do a great promotion and we split it between the red and the green seedless and add black as well, it definitely is the leader of the pack. Almost 60-40 in my stores.
Wow, yeah. And then for usage, grapes overwhelmingly were used as a snack, 93%. And you see some desserts, salads, appetizers, side dish, and of course, the 4% that eat grapes as the main dish. Greg mentioned earlier that maybe that's the 4% of 4-year-olds that will only eat grapes. I've seen that in my house.
I've seen that as well.
Agreed.
And then, kids do love the grapes. And then one thing I really noticed when I'm looking at the trends here is I think about what's on that Environmental Working Group Shoppers Guide to Produce, and grapes do hit that dirty dozen list, but our respondents don't seem to be really pushing the organic grapes. We see 71% always purchase conventional, and 6% always purchased organic, and then 18% did a mix of both. On to salad mix. Greg.
Salad mix got into the top 10 this year. It was previously number 11 on our list. It is the number 2 item right now that people buy who said they did not buy it previously. 53% of people in our survey said they bought salad mix. There are some demographic differences. We couldn't highlight them all, but not surprisingly, I think we see a significant breakdown between female and male shoppers. Female respondents said they bought it. 62% of them bought salad mix versus only 44% for male. So that's almost a 20% percentage point difference between the two genders. Ethnically, we also saw Caucasian consumers buy it 57% of the time, which is significantly higher than other groups, including as low as only 35% for Asian consumers. Salad mix is an item that is very popular organically. Nearly 30% of our respondents said they bought organic salad mix at least some of the time. And interestingly, we asked them about packaging, and 90% say they prefer to buy it in plastic bags, and only 36% use clear plastic containers. And it makes me think that the salad bag has just become so omnipresent in our society that it seems like always the default. But I know it's not the growing trend as far as packaging salad mix. Pamela, you've seen a lot of new products on the bowl and clamshell area, haven't you?
Yes. I've been a judge for the Produce Marketing Association's Impact Packaging Awards, and over the past few years, we've seen a lot of the clamshell style salad packaging come through, and retailers and manufacturers are working together to really reduce the waste, but they want to have that ability to open and close salad, to be able to just take out a handful, and that works well for smaller families, and I think that's their target area, to be able to buy the huge bag, but in a box, so they can go ahead and reuse that packaging. So really think about what you're saying when you're making your grocery list, oh, just grab a bag of salad. You're not going to grab a clamshell salad. I think consumers really think of that, I'll just pick up a bag of salad.
The old adage, go pick up a bag of salad, that's true statement, Pamela. People are gravitating towards the organic mix a little bit more in my stores. We used to have X amount of feet dedicated to each one, and the organic footage, if you will, is starting to grow further and further into the conventional side, but the bags do carry some clout when it comes to repetition.
I think we're also seeing suppliers who are noticing some of the higher end, the higher value salads, that they can do more with them if they put them in bowls than they can if they put them in bags. So we're definitely writing stories about that in the Packer and seeing those kinds of products at various expos. As far as the breakdown of what kinds of salads that people are buying, we see that the most popular one is mixed greens and spring mix. And second and third, very closely behind, are romaine and iceberg mix. Pamela, I know, has some thoughts on why people are buying mixed greens that way.
Well, yeah, if you think about how the breakdown of mixed greens, the bag, when you buy it in a mix, it's really the only attainable way. And if you're going to buy romaine or iceberg, there are a lot more options to buy those rather than the pre-cut bag salad mix. You can always buy the hearts of romaine. You can buy it whole head. Mixed greens are really hard to buy whole head.
Yeah, so while romaine and iceberg are the most popular lettuces, they're not the most popular salads.
Moving on to pears. Pears were the number 13 fruit in Fresh Trends 2014, staying on par with 2013. Their popularity is pretty stable. 37% of respondents purchased pears over the past year. Presence of children in the house. That was a factor in pear purchase. Those with no kids said they only bought pears 34% of the time, but when you bump up to 3 or more kids, 43% of the time, perhaps looking for snacks for all those kids. And Bartlett was the most commonly purchased pear. 38% of our consumers said they prefer to purchase Bartlett pears. And purchase patterns depended heavily on income. Those earning less than $25,000 a year only bought pears 29% of the time, versus the highest bracket, the 100,000 and above, purchased pears. 49% said they purchased pears in the past 12 months. And now lettuce. Let's hear about lettuce, Greg.
Well, lettuce, a lot of the purchase patterns are similar to what we see in salad mix, but there were a few interesting things that stood out to us in this year's survey. Lettuce is the number 9 most commonly purchased vegetable, with 53% of respondents saying they purchased lettuce in the last year. And what really stood out to us this year is the continued rise in popularity of romaine lettuce, often at the expense of iceberg lettuce. Romaine lettuce increased 3 percentage points, and iceberg dropped 4 percentage points from last year's survey. And really, I'd be surprised when we do Fresh Trends 2015 if romaine doesn't jump over iceberg as the most popular variety of lettuce to purchase. Patrick, what are you seeing in your stores as far as popularity of romaine compared to the other lettuce varieties?
I definitely see romaine leading the category, Greg. It's a little bit more healthy for the consumer. It's got that crunch that everybody's looking for. And then, and we try to stress really, really hard our quality of our wet racks, to keep the consumer, to offer them that lettuce category full and fresh every day. And it's really growing. I mean, it's crazy. And then the 3-pack romaines also are very popular as well.
Demographic-wise, it's similar to the salad mix. You'll see it be more popular with older consumers, for sure. And then it also increases with income, as the salad mixes do, and the male-female gap between percentage of purchase is 62% female versus 45% male. So again, it's close to 20% difference of female shoppers buying lettuce over male shoppers. And similarly to salad mix, the Caucasian ethnic group is the highest ethnic group who purchases lettuce, and the Asian group is the least likely ethnic group to buy lettuce, and the difference is over 20 percentage points. Pamela, berries for you?
We decided to lump berries together this year because all four of the major berry categories made the top 20 fruits in 2014. Surprising to no one, I'm sure berries are very popular, especially with retail. Strawberries, the top berry, they were the number 4 fruit this year, down from number 3 last year, but the berries, strawberries and grapes do tend to shift back and forth in popularity. Families really love strawberries. If you take a look at that, no kids versus 3 or more kids, 3 or more kids is 78% purchased strawberries in the past year versus no kids is 62%. And blueberries, the number 2 berry. If you really look at it, they were common with affluent and organic shoppers. Blueberries, 64% purchased only conventional blueberries, and 11% purchased organic only. And then the shift between both conventional and organic was 20%. And then that highest income bracket, the 100,000 and above, 62% purchased blueberries over the past year, compared with 34% of those in the lowest bracket. So really the income was a major factor, mostly in raspberries. They were the number 17 fruit berries this year. And raspberries in the highest income, 43% purchased raspberries over the past year. And if you look back at that blueberry, 62%. So it's really a matter of income. The less than 25,000 a year, 19% purchased raspberries over the past year. And raspberries were most popular in the West. 36% purchased raspberries over the past year. And if you look at blackberries, blackberries were number 18 this year. They went up a spot in the charts, and they were more popular with organic shoppers. A third of the time people purchased organic blackberries over the past year versus conventional. This was one of the fewest that purchased. 59% purchased over the past 12 months. That was one of the lowest numbers in conventional-only purchases. Patrick, what are you seeing in your berry category? Are you seeing any shifts in popularity among the 4 major berries?
You know, I'm looking at your numbers here, and they really do make sense to us. We love berries at Lucky's. I mean, we try to promote a form of a berry every single week of the year if we can. I know it's tough during certain seasons, but the organic consumers definitely are berry driven in our stores. We offer both conventional and organic, but the blackberry seems to be rising pretty rapidly. We've done some weekly promotions on blackberries, and they've done very, very, very well. And you can't go wrong with strawberry. My kids eat them. My grandkids eat them. They're perfect.
All right, and now here's Greg with cantaloupes.
Cantaloupes was not necessarily a feel-good commodity in our survey this year. They dropped to number 10, most popular purchased fruit, which is 3 places down from the previous year. 46% of respondents still purchase cantaloupes, so it's still a significant commodity. There's no doubt about that. I think we have to be honest and say that the outbreaks over the past couple of years have affected purchases of the commodity of cantaloupes. We saw deadly outbreaks of Listeria in Colorado in 2011 and Salmonella again in the summer of 2012. Patrick, that Colorado outbreak was basically in Lucky's backyard. How has that affected the purchases of cantaloupe in especially your Colorado store?
Hey, there's no question that it did affect sales and it did affect the consumer consuming the product. We just fight diligently to train the customer to wash their produce and then continue to sell quality product. But it has dipped. We're proponents of the each price, if you will. If we can offer a cantaloupe for a each price instead of a pound price, it takes the guessing part out of the cost value to the customer. So we're trying to do everything we can to help push sales for that cantaloupe. But yeah, it did affect for sure.
As far as demographic breakdown, we see that it is more popular with older populations, which is consistent with previous years. And as far as geographically, we see that it's slightly more popular in the South. Other demographic highlights. Income is a factor where the two income groups over $50,000 a year in household income are over 50% purchase instances, whereas the two groups below are 44 and 34%. So it's definitely a factor that income affects cantaloupe purchase. As far as picking ripe cantaloupe, half of our survey respondents said that they can pick a ripe cantaloupe, but only 28% say they can ripen it at home. So there's definitely education out there for both producers and retailers.
Grapefruit was another one. Yeah, grapefruit dropped out of the top 20 fruits this year, down from number 17. It's had a rough year among our survey respondents. And 22% of shoppers said they bought grapefruit in the past year, so it still is significant for retailers. I know we eat a lot of grapefruit in our house, so we also live in Texas, and I'm a little bit partial. But where we saw one of the biggest shifts was in the age category. I took a look at last year's results, and you look at the older age groups, the 59 and up, they dropped from 33% to 22%. And then that next lower one, the 50 to 58, dropped from 34% to 19%. And I think that's probably the use of statins and grapefruit being contraindicated for statin users. That really hurts them among the older shoppers. But just to see that huge shift from last year to this year, I thought was pretty significant to point out.
Yeah, we normally see that kind of shift be much more gradual, and it was surprising to see it be dramatic in 1 year.
Yeah.
Well, we talk about apples, and everyone knows that apples are one of the top, most popular commodities, and it is number 2 behind bananas, which is a familiar spot for apples. 82% of consumers in our survey say they bought apples in the previous year. And what jumps out at us is how apples have changed over the past few years as far as varieties. And this is something that we've noticed over the past few years. Red Delicious seems to slip every year in popularity. We ask consumers.
Yeah, last year they were 22%.
Right. We ask consumers, this isn't if they can only buy one, but we ask them which they prefer to purchase. And honestly, I'm really surprised that Red Delicious holds on as the number 1 spot year after year. We see the other items here, and especially Fuji and Gala are being produced in such large quantities from so many different areas of the country that I'm surprised it's not starting to take over a little bit. Patrick, what do you see in your stores as far as apple varieties? Are you seeing certain varieties become the number 1 variety?
Yeah, Greg, we're seeing the Gala and Fuji grow to really take the lead. And then the Braeburns are kicking in right behind that. In the last couple of years, the Honeycrisp has come on strong, especially, there's a local Western Slope Colorado crop, very, very popular in the Colorado marketplace. And then the Pink Ladies and the Pink Crisps are starting to follow suit. So The old standby, Rake Delicious and Golden Delicious are starting to see some competition, to say the least.
And of course, this survey doesn't even capture some of the new varieties that all these producers are putting out there that are crosses of more popular apple varieties, and some of them coming out of the market are available only for a certain month or short season. But they're such excellent apples; they're just not being produced right now in large enough quantity to make our survey. And of course, they're also available regionally, so not everyone has an opportunity to get some of those. Organically, apples are a very popular choice for buying organic. You see, almost 30% buy at least some organic some of the time here. And that leads us right into the organic section of our survey, which Pamela's going to discuss.
Yeah, more than a quarter of Fresh Trends respondents said they typically bought organic produce. And that kind of falls along the lines of what we're seeing nationally. But price is still a factor. More than half said they would buy organic produce if price was not an issue. And the reasons for buying organic produce, of course, this is a subjective survey. They said food safety, 51%, taste was 47%, and personal health was 45%. And some of the standouts for organics, sprouts, and we discussed this earlier, blackberries. And I know, Patrick, you guys are focusing a bit on organics in Lucky's Market. What do you see organically growing? What are consumers really targeting in your stores?
We're seeing a good lift in the green veg categories in the last year. We try to offer the kales, the chards, the beets, the bunch beets, the bunch carrots. We're seeing a good lift in those items. The organic salads are always really, really popular if you want to throw those in the mix. But you're right, the berries are really they're positive. But really seeing a good lift in those wet rack items. It's just if we could, in a perfect world, if we could sell organic, at a conventional price, we'd be real happy. Merchants, but obviously we can't do that. We're really starting to see a lift in organic altogether.
Well, and part of our demographics, the younger consumers, ages 21 to 39, and those with kids at home, were the most popular. They were the most likely to put organic produce in their carts. Are you seeing that trend in your stores as well?
Absolutely. I believe the kids in the 21 to 39 age bracket, if you will, when I say kids, don't quote me on my age, but they're more health conscious. They understand what's going on with life in general and the future of their futures and their children's futures. So I think that they understand that that we're moving in a direction of a health conscious world. I was talking to somebody yesterday. Just how long ago was the cell phone obsolete? Not very long ago. So I've seen the organic produce business grow in some markets in my past by accident, but now that we're focusing hard on it and trying to build awareness out there, I think I definitely think the younger crowds are getting involved to help with that.
Your organic breakdown in your stores, what are you shooting for?
We're about, we're shooting for 50-50, but we're hovering around 60-40. Some stores are greater than others. We have a store here in Boulder, Colorado that's 100%, if you will, 90% during this time of year. We've got a few items that are conventional in there just because of the time of season it is, but that's a standout store that we have here in Boulder that's very organic driven. But most of our markets are all about 60-40, hovering in that range.
Okay, great. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you.
Of course, we'll also remind our listeners that as popular as organic is, it is still around 5 or 6% of overall fresh produce sales. So it is a growing factor, but it is by far well below the traditional conventional produce items. Well, that's all we have time for today. I want to thank all of our audience out there for spending about an hour with us today. We hope this leads to better merchandising and better marketing and a more targeted approach to the various commodities and overall trends going on in the marketplace. I'd like to thank our webcast sponsors, the Pear Bureau Northwest and First Fruits Marketing of Washington, which are the exclusive North American marketers of the Opal apple. As you can see, the webinar will be available on demand, so please pass it on to peers and colleagues. And if you have questions for any of the three panelists here today, you can email those to me at gjohnson@packer.com, and we'll get to them and respond as quickly as we can. Thanks and have a good afternoon.